Welcome to the Redbird Report, your destination for the latest on the St. Louis Cardinals. Here are your hosts, BK and T-Bone.
Welcome back, episode 3 of the Redbird Report with Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. Last time we recorded, the Cardinals were 4-2. Disappointing 2 losses. They were both in extra innings. Seems like a theme of the season thus far. Unfortunately, they are now 5-7. It was a very disappointing road trip for the Cardinals. They go 1-5 combined against Boston and Pittsburgh. They have to play the doubleheader on Sunday. They play one of those games into extra innings, and then we are recording this on Thursday afternoon. Yesterday afternoon, they played another extra inning game. This one goes into 13 innings. It's been a frustrating week in Cardinals baseball, and that road trip, it really exposed many of the flaws of this roster. The bullpen is not deep. The rotation has guys that you just don't know what you're getting out of them every fifth day at times, and so you end up having blow-up innings, basically, is what it amounted to. I went back through because I wanted to see T-Bone, all right, where did these things go awry? Every game seemingly had one thing that went wrong. It's a game of whack-a-mole with the Cardinals right now. Game 1 against Boston, Fetty, 5 earned runs allowed in that first inning. He ends up going 3 innings, gives up 6 earned runs. Boom, there's your story of the game. I could tell you nothing else. You lost that game.
Yep.
Game 1 of the doubleheader against Boston. You're up 4-2, bottom of the 9th inning. You hand it over to Ryan Helsley. It is exactly the way that they would draw it up. If they could script this thing, this is it. Ryan Helsley goes out there, throws more than 30 pitches, cannot hit the strike zone, walks 4, gives up 2 earned runs, and then they end up walking it off in the 10th. Game 2 of that doubleheader, Michaelis gave up 5 runs in the second inning, goes 2 2/3, gives up 8 runs in total. Wonder what the storyline was of that game. Then Gordon Graceffo comes in, he also implodes, but the game was already over. It was well out of reach. Game 1 against Pittsburgh. It was the Chris Roycroft game. You're down 4-2, he enters the game. Now you're down 8-2. He gives up 3 earned runs. Game 3 against Pittsburgh, the offense was the story. It was really the first time all year because they had scored 4 or more runs in every game prior to Wednesday's game, the 12th game of the season, against the Pittsburgh Pirates. They score 1 run. They go a total of 3 for 13 with runners in scoring position, including 4 different opportunities with a runner on second to begin an inning. They get that guy in 1 time. 1 time did they drive him in, and it was by a guy that was not in the game to begin. So it was a frustrating week in Cardinals land. T-Bone, I have now spoken for a couple of minutes. You have not yet made your thoughts known. What did you think of the way that the Cardinals have played over the last week?
Very frustrating. You look at them and coming off of that Minnesota series, you get the Angels, you drop 2 or 3. That's a series where you got to take advantage of that. But again, your pitching blows up in that one, so it doesn't end up working out for you. I find them playing right now a giant game of whack-a-mole, and they can't seem to figure out the bullpen. And they're working on it. They've optioned Chris Roycroft today as we're recording on Thursday. They've called up Munoz, who was on the 40-man roster, who's got dynamic stuff, but he has walk issues down in Memphis. That's the biggest problem for them right now. Their offense is way better than I was expecting. I thought the offense was going to be the thing that we talked about as being a problem. Hey, they're not scoring runs. They're not coming through as runners in scoring position. Jordan Walker, Nolan Gorman aren't hitting. The young guys, Newbar's probably hurt at this point. And in fact, it is now the pitching that is the biggest single problem for them. They just do not have guys that can avoid these blow-up innings. It's really 1 innings cost them in every game so far this year. And the bullpen's had a couple of outings where everybody just doesn't have their stuff. But you can really circle 1 inning where the baseball game is lost. And that is something that will eventually correct itself, at least for the starting rotation. The bullpen, it's more about churning through guys like they're starting to do right now. But my concern is you don't get those fixes till it's too late. Because now you just miss a golden opportunity. And look, this was a decently tough road trip. Boston, that is no team to sneeze at. They are really good. They are going to be a playoff team. In fact, I think they win the AL East. The Pirates are not. Coming into the year, even for all the lows I had on the St. Louis Cardinals, I thought they were a better baseball team than the Pittsburgh Pirates. And there are no excuses to go in there and lose 2 of 3. It just cannot happen, especially knowing that your schedule only gets tougher from here. So that was a very frustrating, very disappointing, and for a team that is trying to win in April, very much a letdown when you go to Pittsburgh and lose 2 of 3.
Yeah, you look at it, and like so far this year, LA Angels series, you could have argued, I would argue, you should have won at least 2 out of 3 in that series. I think you could have made an argument for a sweep, but just to be conservative here, 2 out of 3. You should have won one more game there. That Boston series, you have to win that game that Ryan Helsley comes in, up 4-2. You've got to close that thing out. They couldn't. They just didn't do it. This is the one spot. Now, I think that there are some legit questions, some legit gripes on the way that Ollie has managed some of these games, especially with the bullpen. I don't think he's had an easy task, but there's, stuff that I would have done a little differently. That's baseball. That's the nature of the game. In that spot, I didn't disagree at all with him sticking with Ryan Helsley. That's your dude, and he just didn't have it on that day. Some said, hey, you got to take him out. I disagreed with that. I think that he did the right thing, and the guy let him down. It sucks. It's the way that it goes sometimes, though. But you've got to win that game. You have to come out on top, and they were not able to. So that's another one that I would throw into the should have been a win category. And then yesterday, that Wednesday game against Pittsburgh, you have to win that game.
Yeah.
You had allowed one run the entire day against the Pittsburgh Pirates, and you have a good offense. You are an offensive-minded team. You have to find a way to win that one. If you had simply won the games that you should have won thus far and changed nothing else about it, you still have blow-up innings by Miles Michaelis and Eric Fetty. You still have some moments where Chris Roycroft looks bad. Like, all of that stuff still exists, and you are by no means a perfect baseball club. You're looking at it right now, and you're 8-4, 12 games into the season.
Yeah.
And we're feeling pretty confident going into this stretch where they have 13 games in 13 days. Maybe you don't feel as though they're a contender, but you feel like you've got a little bit of wiggle room where you're going up against Philly and Houston and the Mets and the Braves and the Brewers. That's 5 consecutive series against teams that at least came into the season with playoff hopes going into the year. Well, now, instead of that, you're 2 games below 500, and you're thinking to yourself, this could be the stretch for the 3rd consecutive season that puts us underwater and makes us feel as though we have no chance once we get into the month of May. And this is what we talked about on episode 1 of our podcast, T-Bone, is, man, just do something to get fans excited. You don't have to make them jump fully on board. That's fair. That's hard to do because this fan base came into the season skeptical that this team was going to be capable of doing anything of meaning. Don't do the thing that you've done, though. Don't go 10-24. Don't start 15-24. Avoid that, where the season is over by the time we get to June 1st. Well, it's not over yet. They're 5-7. They could turn this thing back around. They could right the ship. Maybe this weekend you go 3 against Philly, you win 2 out of 3, and we're feeling fine coming out of next weekend. We come back on this podcast, they win 2 out of 3 against Philly, 1 out of 3 against Houston. You're like, okay, still in it, still alive. The problem is, I think a lot of people in our audience right now are thinking to themselves, that's not going to happen. Yeah. They're going to lose 4 or 5 of their next 6 games, and now you're underwater, and you go into that series in New York, and boom, that's when the season goes to hell again. So it's just frustrating because they had every opportunity to do the thing that they needed to do, and instead, they dropped the ball.
It is frustrating. I don't know how you feel, but I feel okay about them recovering from this. Not so much of, like, if they go 10-24. I mean, if that's the case, it's over. I mean, you can just plan on selling Maton, you can plan on selling Helsley, and maybe you'll listen to, Fetty, and then maybe Gray or Contreras says, I'd like to leave, please.
Sure.
But the reason I think that I've got a little bit more confidence in, hey, I think though it is frustrating and there are some alarm bells going off, I think some of this stuff can be quickly turned around. Like the bullpen, for example. I'll start with them.
Sure.
Ryan Fernandez, I think it went under the radar. He pitched in that game yesterday on Wednesday against the Pittsburgh Pirates. 1 inning, looked great. If his stuff clicks back into place and he gets back to old form, on top of Maton, who looks good, Helsley, who you know is going to be good, on top of Leahy, if this sustains, boom, now I've got 4 arms. And maybe this Munoz, guys, that they call up, he's got a cannon of an arm. Now, he may walk the world, but if he strikes out the world as well, the walks don't matter. So maybe all of a sudden that guy clicks into place. So it's easy to see the path for the bullpen to kind of figure itself out. Now, I'm not going to say that's going to happen, but there's the path.
And on that, before you get to whatever comes next, part of that is also the starters getting deeper into games.
100%.
Part of that is, hey, instead of needing to go to a Munoz or previously a Roycroft, whoever that guy is that's bridging the gap between your starter and your leverage relievers, and I think you do have at least 2, maybe 3 of them right now that you can trust, depending on how you feel about Kyle Leahy, so you can have the 7th, 8th, and 9th locked down. What about that 5th or 6th inning right now that you're having to bridge the gap to? That's where they're having struggles. Dude, if you just get more consistent starting pitching, you don't have to bridge that gap. And this is, hey, Sonny Gray, you need to be more consistent in getting deeper into games. Hey, Fetty, you got 6. That was great. Now you've got your pitch count built up. Next time out there, if you have a similar situation, you've got 85 pitches through the 6th inning, go out there and throw 1 more, get yourself into the 7th, and not only does it help you that day, it also helps buy an inning for the bullpen the next day where one of your leverage arms now hasn't been used, and they're available to go the next day, and they're not going back-to-back again. So that's another piece of that component that you're talking about there where, yes, the bullpen could get better quicker, and also you could just eliminate the biggest issue that you have right now if your starting pitching is able to get a little deeper into these games. I digress. Go ahead.
Well, and that ties into what my second one is it's the starting pitching avoiding that 1 inning. Like, you think back to all their starts. I mean, you can pinpoint exactly 1 inning where it went awry for the starter, or at least led to them getting pulled early. Like, I mean, you mentioned
5 runs in the first.
Exactly, so that leads to him getting pulled.
Michaelis, 5 runs in the second.
Michaelis just bad. But
the grand slam for Sonny Gray that he gave up.
You think back to Libertor's 2 start. Now, he's been able to eat some innings for the Cardinals. But really where things have gone awry for him, it's been the
3rd inning and the
against the Angels and the 2nd inning against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Outside of that, I think he's been good. And I know the numbers, like the standard numbers for Matthew Libertor, don't look good. His ERA's inflated right now. It's only been 2 starts.
He's been good.
Exactly. The strikeout rate is good, and the walk rate's really good because it's 0. So that is the biggest thing for them. Now, the one critique I will have of the Cardinals, especially the way that Ali Marmol has been speaking in post games. I mean, he mentioned Eric Fetty. Well, he wasn't going to go out there. He's basically at his pitch limit already. Sonny Gray got pulled at like 71 pitches in that game against Paul Skeens. Why are these guys not built up already?
I think this team has a lack of urgency in April.
I agree. And I think that shows it right there. Because if you're going to say, hey, we need to win in April, or at least be competitive in April so we can hopefully pull the fans back in, whether that is in May or in June, then why is Sonny Gray not built up to be able to go for maybe not even 190 pitches? You know, Paul Skeens is the best arm in baseball. The arm that if there was anybody in baseball that the organization that had them was saying, we should protect this guy at all costs, and when it is 30 degrees outside, yeah, he should not be throwing 100-plus pitches. It's Paul Skeens. He did exactly that as a second-year arm for the Pittsburgh Pirates. There's no excuse for Sonny Gray to not be able to go toe-to-toe with him in terms of pitch count. So I think it's that. I also think it's overconfidence what they have in their bullpen. Because why else would you say, you know what, it's okay if we slow play these guys and build them up in season? Oh, it's because we got a great bullpen. And now we've seen where that's come to bite the Cardinals in the rear end. So that's why I think that though there has been frustration with the way things have gone, I think those are things that can be fixed. These 1 inning like hiccups from each starter, and then the bullpen, that is something that most teams have to figure out in a season. You can fix that. You're going to be fine because this offense, to me, is not going to be taking a step back. This offense is legitimate.
I've got some questions about that. We can get to that here in just a little bit. On the point of pitch counts, you know how many times a pitcher has thrown at least 100 pitches so far this year? What would you guess? We are 2 weeks into the regular season. How many times do you think a pitcher has thrown 100-plus pitches so far this year?
I feel like I've seen a couple. I'll go 10 times.
25.
Okay. I figured it'd be a little higher than I was expecting.
And the reason why I bring this up is because it goes back to, I think some of this is based on science, right? The Cardinals know the majority of pitching injuries take place in the first month of the season. We see it every year. It's an overuse situation where they were not built all the way up. They feel like they can get back to what they were a year ago by the time that they left the year. I'm not comparing myself to a professional athlete, I promise you, but dude, I do this. Coming out of the winter, I'm like, okay, yeah, as a runner, I'll be fine. I can just get back to what I was. Guess what I'm dealing with right now? Runner's knee, because I was not fine. I was not built up the way that I should have been. And so that is a true thing. Like, the Cardinals are trying to be very cautious with these arms that they know they need to have once we get into July, August, September, etc. They don't have the depth. They need these arms to be available for them. I get that. That makes sense to me. I think they take it a bridge too far. And I think some of this, too, is, hey, if you know that's the part of the season where these guys have the most injuries, hey, shouldn't you take that into account in spring training? So you train them to be ready accordingly. If you know, hey, if we don't have these guys ready to go up to their pitch count that is necessary, by the time we get to April 9th, Eric Fetty might have 85 pitches through 6 innings, and we can't send him back out there for another inning, and that's going to be problematic because they should have known this. They knew their bullpen wasn't great. They knew their bullpen wasn't deep. How do I know that? They signed him to Phil Maton 3 weeks into spring training, man. So, like, they knew with their actions and their words and everything else they said all offseason, we'd like to add another bullpen arm. We'd like to – they knew. They knew they had question marks there. They also had a lot of youth there, so they had to cover for that early on before they knew whether or not these guys were actually going to be good in 2025. So, what do you do to avoid that? Get these dudes built up quicker. Now, Sonny Gray's just never going to be a guy that goes deep into games. It's going to drive us crazy. He's not Adam Wainwright. He's not Chris Carpenter. He's not those guys. But what he is a really freaking good number 1 starter that goes 5 to 6 innings with regularity. And by the end of the season, if you get 30 starts out of him, hey, guess what? That's 175 innings of a 3+ ERA, and you like having that guy as a part of your rotation. It's just frustrating watching each start because he does not go as deep as you'd like for a traditional ace. A lot of those aces don't exist anymore. The guys that frustrate me are guys like Miles Michaelis, who's blowing up with regularity right now, and he can't give you those innings, and that's the only value that he brings to the table. Or Eric Fetty, who, hey man, you're going to have like a 4 ERA this year. The value is that you're going to eat 180 to 200 innings. Can you please stay out there for that 100th pitch, please? Go back out there for the 7th. And I don't think it was his decision. I think it was Ollie's. Those are the things that really frustrate me. Sonny's a little lower on that list for me.
Yeah, I will say I find a Michaelis, a guy that's supposed to, quote-unquote, eat innings, I think it's a little unfair to put that on him anymore. It's why I kind of brought up the plan on our show that you should go out and sign a Kyle Gibson because that guy can't eat innings. He's still effective. He's got a little bit of swing and miss, more than Miles Michaelis does. I just think we're at the point where Miles Michaelis, that kind of pitcher, just, and I just say this doesn't belong in baseball because he can't, the defense can't shift to help him out. That was the number one thing in his start against Boston. If they had the shift, Michaelis goes 6 innings. I 100% believe that because there were balls that were hit where the second baseman used to shift over. So I believe in that. I find Gray actually a little bit more frustrating. And here's why. I think as a number 1 starter, you've got to take the ball, you've got to go out there, you've got to end the losing streak, and you've got to eat as many innings as possible. And I understand the...
What if that's not who he is, though?
Then I don't think he's a true number 1.
Then I think that's what it is. I don't think he's a true number 1. I think he is this team's number 1 starter.
Sure.
I don't think he is a traditional number 1 starter. I don't think he's ever going to be like a Logan... Webb from San Francisco. I don't think he is a Zach Wheeler or even an Aaron Nola.
Paul Skeens.
Yeah, he's not that guy. And that's okay. Like, we just have to be okay with that because the Cardinals also didn't pay him $400 million. They gave him a 3-year deal. It's $30 a year. It's more than in line with what he is worthy of getting for you right now. I think Sonny Gray is on a true World Series contender, a very good number 2 starter, like an excellent number 2 starter. And you just have to be okay on your team for that to be the number 1. I'm not telling you have to love it, but until you develop that true number 1 guy, this is the kind of thing that you can get via free agency. Because otherwise, when you're paying Garrett Cole $400 million, you're going out there and paying, or you get lucky and Zach Wheeler just becomes what Zach Wheeler's been. But for the most part, you don't sign or trade for legit number 1 dudes unless you're willing to pay $300+ million or give up basically your entire farm system for them.
Yeah, and I guess that's fair. I guess even as a 2, though, my frustration, especially because when you're Sonny Gray and you've got this good of stuff, do you know how many times he threw more? And I know, like, I'm going to sound like the old man that loves seeing the pitchers hit still, which I wouldn't mind. But you know how many times he threw more than 90 pitches last season in a start?
I have to imagine it's like 5.
It's actually
7.
a little bit more than you. 14.
Okay.
Only half, though, of his starts did he throw more than 90 pitches. And I don't remember the exact game, but I do remember the scenario coming up. And you saw the Pirates do this with Mitch Keller pushed him an extra inning. You saw them do this with Paul Skeens, where there was a time last year where Gray got into a rough spot. And it was late in the game. And instead of saying, hey, Sonny Gray's our guy. This is our best arm. He needs to pitch out of this. It was a waving the white flag. We got to go to the bullpen. And that, to me, is where it's infuriating. Again, that hasn't happened for him just yet.
Right.
But going just 71 pitches, and I get it was cold outside, that can't happen for Sonny Gray. I don't care if you are a number 1. If you are more of the 2, as what I am describing, which is probably more of a fair assessment, he's a number 2, but a number 1 on the Cardinals, that still can't happen. That is what sets you behind in series, and I don't think that was the game that ultimately came back to hurt them. But you can't just go 71 pitches because it's cold outside.
I agree.
If it's October, what are you doing?
I agree. I completely agree with you on this. This I agree with. In general, I think him not going deep enough into games gets a little overstated. This week, I thought it was just flat out the wrong decision. I also think it has a trickle-down effect of if you're not going to him, it means that you're having to use relievers that you don't want to use the next day. Steven Matz being one of those, where he ended up having, it's not expected. They didn't expect they were going to have to go 13 innings yesterday, but he ended up having to go back-to-back games, which is not something they want to do with Steven Matz, who is traditionally a starter, and it was expected to go into the starting rotation very soon as a part of that six-man rotation. By the way, on this note, final thing here. Last year, here's Eric Fetty's pitch count in the first month of the season. A season in which he was great and lasted the entire year. And the Cardinals got him because he's stable. 96, 91, 93, 94, 95, 108.
108 and start like 5?
Yes. Oh. It's just I completely disagree with their handling of him the other day. It didn't lose in the game. They lost because the offense stunk, and they ended up going 3 for 15 with runners in scoring position. But their handling of Eric Fetty, I thought, was symbolic of some of the issues that I have with the way that this team approaches the month of April.
Can I raise a quick tinfoil here? Because I raised this with frustration is from last offseason when they signed Lennon Gibson with club options to give them outs for if this fails. Yeah. Well, if you're operating like that, I'm expecting it to fail. Is this them being precautious with him early on for trade protection?
Maybe.
That would make sense.
I don't think so, because if it was, it would just be an Eric Fetty thing.
That's fair.
I think it is this is their organizational philosophy with pitching in the month of April. So does that then become Eric Fetty, we need him to be available for us in July? Sure, you could read it that way, but I don't think it is specific to him. I don't think it is specific to Sonny Gray. I think this is just,
that's fair.
They truly believe, organizationally, that in April, your pitchers break because you use them too much. And the best way to avoid that is by not using them as much. All right, we're 20 minutes into this thing. We got to get to Willson Contreras, because I've mentioned yesterday the offense was really bad. More specifically, Willson Contreras was once again very bad. So far this year, he's striking out nearly 50% of the time. I looked this up earlier today, T-Bone, because I feel like the game has been finding Willson Contreras in big moments lately. Willson Contreras this year with runners in scoring position, 3 for 17 with 1 walk, 7 strikeouts in those spots. He has 3 RBIs. He's had 29 runners on when he's come up with a runner in scoring position. Like, if you counted up the total number of runners on while he's up there with a runner in scoring position, it is 29 total runners. Again, 3 of them have been driven in by Willson Contreras. 1 of those with a walk. 6 times a game or an inning has ended because Willson Contreras went up to the plate with 2 outs, runner in scoring position, and he was unable to come through. The game is finding Willson right now while he is looking vulnerable at the plate. So much so that the Pirates attacked him yesterday. The game didn't just find Willson Contreras. The Pirates seeked out Willson Contreras. And what they did? Consistently attacked him.
Yep.
Attack him away, attack him away, attack him with spin, attack him with spin. He mentioned this after the game. Hey, in spring training, everybody was throwing me fastballs. And so I was hitting the crap out of the fastballs, but none of that is game plan oriented. They're just out there trying to get their work in. They're trying to get their pitches in. They're trying to get their innings in. Now we get into the regular season. People see that I'm struggling with spin. And so what do? He said, look, you can go look at my at-bats. I'm not getting any fastballs to hit right now. So everything coming at him is slider. It's a curveball. Everything is spinning. And he is now having his head spin while he's up at the plate. And so the question has come up, and I think it's a more than valid one. What do you do with him? Because right now he's been stable in that number 2 spot in the lineup where they wanted him to be. And at the beginning of the season, I loved it. I came on here, I tweeted out the video. I love the lineup construction by Ollie Marmol. It's great. You couldn't do a better one. I still believe that. At the beginning of the season, that was the best way to construct your lineup. It's not anymore. And if this team was in like true contend now mode, there would be no question asked. He would have to drop down in this order. That's not truly what this season is about, though. It's about now and the future, and Willson Contreras at least should be a part of that future based on his contract. What do you do if you're in Ollie Marmol's shoes? Do you leave him in that 2-hole, wait for him to get better, see if it does get better over the next couple of weeks, or are you making the change?
I'm making the change. I don't think he can hit second, and those numbers that you had are fantastic because, and I'm guessing that that's probably the most runners that have been left on base by a Cardinal, and it's probably the most Cardinals
believe it
opportunity.
is, yeah.
Because why do people hit guys in the 2 spot? Because the analytics tell you they're going to run into most runners in scoring position,
And the
most
Cardinals
runners
have
on
had a really
base.
good bottom of the order this year as well,
Exactly.
which adds to the
and that
number
was the
of
whole thought
opportunities.
process from Ollie
Yeah.
Marmol. Again, to your point, I like the lineup construction. Yeah, I think you got to move him down. And I hate the argument of, well, we might lose the player if we do that. I'm not saying bench him. He's still in the lineup. He is going to figure it out. And I think this is where the honest conversation has to come. Ollie Marmol was raved in his first season in 2022 for being able to do the hard stuff like this. Hey, Albert, we're going to pinch hit. Here's why. Now, at the time, I don't think he was thinking, at some point we're going to start you against right-handers that throw 95. But
at the time, it was Nolan Gorman was literally taking big opportunities away from Albert Pujols because it was a better opportunity for Gorman than for Albert.
And I think you can have this conversation if you're Ollie and say, Contreras, we still believe you're going to do it. We still believe you're going to bounce back. You're going to figure this out. I truly believe that. I'm not overly concerned, but it's okay for us to move you back in the line. And once you start hitting again, dude, we're not just going to keep you in the 5 spot, which is where I would hit him. We're going to put you back up into that 2 spot because he is their best overall hitter when he is right. So I think they've got to move him down. I think this is the hard conversation that Ollie Marmol has got to have. It's also the same conversation because of I just think there is a difference between, hey, we're going to bench a guy from, hey, we're going to kind of just do this one opportunity or we're going to move you down in the lineup. We still believe in you. The whole conversation we had, I think it was last week about Mason Wynn, right? There's no way on earth you ever pull Mason Wynn out of the lineup, but it's okay at times when he is struggling to pinch hit for him. And I think these are the tough conversations that Ollie Marmol has to have, even though this is a retooling year. And I definitely think it has to happen with Contreras. Now, my batting order going into this game against Philadelphia tomorrow on Friday against Aaron Nola? I believe it's Aaron Nola tomorrow. I would go Newport at the top like they have been. I would bump Donovan up to the 2 spot. I would go Arenado 3. I would bump Burley to 4, and then Contreras would be 5. And the reason that I bumped Burley up into that cleanup spot, I don't know if he's been okay so far. I don't think he's been great by any means. But then I've got that platoon advantage to where if Ollie mentions, and I think it's I think it's a little overstated by the Cardinals, the whole idea of, well, then we create this left-handed lane. Well, you're not pinch hitting for Newbar, and he looks great. Donovan looks great. He can hit anybody right now. And then if you are afraid of, well, then Burley's going to see that lefty, boom, we've got the counter off the bench. There's Luke and Baker, just like they've been doing. So you create at least that avenue for them. That's how I would construct the lineup against Philly.
They'll never do what I'm about to say. I want to say that on the front end.
You can do like 3 lefties in a row?
I will say this. It's really hard to construct a lineup right now without having a bunch of lefties at the top of the order.
Yes.
Because your best hitters have all been lefties. Newbar has to stay at leadoff. That part to me is you can't even have a conversation about it. And the lineup really begins at 2. What do you do there? If you're moving Contreras down, you've got to have a better option. I like your scenario. I want to say that up front. I've been a fan of the idea of the on base at the top of the order and then figure it out from there. What if you're going to hate this. What if you put Mason Wynn batting second? He's been hitting really well lately. He has the speed that you could use that at the top of the order. He has the history of batting leadoff, so it's not all that dissimilar from the Donnie idea. Now, he doesn't get on base like Donnie does.
Sure.
He does have more of a contact-oriented profile, but he doesn't strike out. I wouldn't mind him moving back up toward the top of the order right now. See if you can capture lightning on the bottle while he's hitting the way that he has been. He's an emotional player. Maybe this is a series where you could get the most out of him. So win 2. Donovan, just don't touch him because he's been amazing lately. Leave him in that 3 spot. Arenado loves batting cleanup. You have him there. You continue with a left-right with Burleson batting 5th. And then that's where it gets tough because now I have basically all right-handed hitters remaining. But you could go something like Walker, Contreras, Scott, Pages. I know they hate having that catcher in the 9 hole because it doesn't have any speed for the leadoff spot. Yeah. But if you go left there, you would have the left with Scott going into Newt. I don't think they want to open up that potential lane. So you probably would have to do something like Scott 8, Pages 9. And then I don't know with Contreras and Walker who you would want to bat where. But you have them toward the bottom of the order like 6, 7. How would you feel about that?
So I don't mind the idea of going to win at 2 because I don't mind this whole idea of playing the hot hand and bumping guys up and down the lineup. Like I think teams get too stuck on their lineup construction. So I actually don't mind that. I mean, he's hitting 370 over the last 7 games.
He's been great.
So he's been fantastic. He's figured it out. So all my concerns with him from spring training are out the door. I don't mind that, and it avoids that left-right matchup. It keeps Donovan, to your point, in that middle where he's been fantastic, and then Arenado stays.
Most comfortable batting cleanup anyway.
So he stays. I think the only spot where I would just differ from your lineup, and I know it's going to sound weird and it gets rid of the whole left-right thing, is I think you have to hit Contreras 5. I think no matter what, the lowest you can move him is 5. So
you go Contreras 5, Burleson 6, Walker 7, Scott 8,
8, Scott 9. Okay. And I know it kind of creates that left-handed lane you're talking
Either
about,
way,
but
same idea.
I think it's fine. I like that idea of Mason Wynn going into the 2 spot. He's going to hit for contact, though the on-base won't always be there because he gets on base by hitting for average. Might as well strike while the iron's hot. So I'm all in on that idea, and I think that might be something they consider, actually.
Is this, in your opinion, better or worse than going to Donovan, Arenado, Burleson as your 2-3-4? Like, which of the – because that's really the conversation. Which of these 2-3-4s do you prefer? Donovan, Arenado, Burleson, or Wynn, Donovan, Arenado? Because Nootbaar's leading off in both scenarios, and in your mind, Contreras bats 5th in both scenarios. So the bottom half of the order, not all that dissimilar.
I think right now it is probably yours, Wynn, Donovan, Arenado. Because now you don't have to worry about a left-handed lane at all. And the reason I say that, because we don't really know the status of Nolan Gorman, is not only am I thinking about that left-handed lane for when the bullpen comes in, so say they bring in a lefty in my scenario, which is Burley's hitting 4th, and you'd have 3 of 4 lefties at the top of your order.
Sure, right. So it's Newt, Donovan, Arenado, Burleson for those that are listening and don't have it in front of them.
Yes. They can go to the bullpen to that left-handed lane. You can counter that first time with Luke and Baker. But the way the roster is currently constructed, now you're at a disadvantage that next time around, if they decide, okay, we say they get a lefty near the bottom there for Scott, which is another issue, Scott, Wynn, and then back up top, Newt, Donovan. Well, now they can go back to that right-handed bat, and you don't have the counter for Baker. And that's
because
the problem,
you don't have
Gorman
potentially on this in this scenario.
Well, no, I'm saying
because you don't have the pinch hitter in Saggese to be able to replace one of those guys.
Exactly.
You don't have a counter now.
Well, and I'm saying because you don't have Gorman currently as constructed. Because right now he's on the IL, and they've said they think he'll be back for this Philly series. Because my issue is then, because it's the DH spot, so you don't really need a position player, so you don't have to worry about the defense. But are you going to pinch it Saggese for Baker against a righty? I don't think they would do that. But if you have Gorman, you can. If you get what I'm saying.
Right. I think we're talking about 2 different scenarios potentially. I'm talking about, hey, you get back into this. So in 1 inning, they go to a lefty, Newt, Donnie, Arenado, Burleson. Now you use your righty in that spot in Luke and Baker, right? You use him for Alec Burleson probably. They get through the next 3 in Contreras, Walker, Pages. Now you are back into the next inning. They bring in another lefty to face Scott, Wynn, and Nootbaar and Donovan. That is the 4 that they're going up against. You have no way to scare them away from doing that because of Saggese. Saggese would be the thing that could, at least in theory, scare them from doing that because you have him on your bench. When Gorman returns, you no longer even have that threat coming off of the bench unless they send Siani down instead of sending Thomas Saggese down. And I do think this is probably something worth talking about real quick here, T-Bone. I think that should be a conversation. I think you should seriously consider keeping Thomas Saggese with the roster. I know he had a bad moment the other day with his base running, and he had a bad at-bat the other day as well. But he's shown some power. He has shown the ability to hit major league pitching at this point in time. And while I like Michael Siani for defense and base running, and he does have speed that helps you, one of the biggest reasons why that defense is so necessary is because Jordan Walker was thought to be a huge liability in right field.
Yep.
Do you think he's a liability in right field? I haven't seen it a single time, and we're 12 games into the regular season. In fact, I've seen him make plays in right field this year. Like that play that he had the other night to finish off the game against Pittsburgh, he won you that game.
100%.
If that gets over his head, you're going into extra innings on Tuesday, and now it's a disaster all around. But he makes the play. He makes the catch. We don't really talk about it because it's almost the forgotten play. Thank God. He got the win.
And I was going to say, it looked like he's about to fall while he's running after that baseball.
But he made the play, and it was a tough one. It was a really good catch by him in right field. I don't know if it's as necessary anymore for you to go to that defense in the late inning situations. And I do think right now, given the number of left-handed bats that you have towards the top of your order, especially if they make this switch, it might be necessary for you to have multiple right-handed bench bats available for you as you get into these late game situations. So I think it's something not only should they consider, but for me personally, I would advocate for them to keep Thomas Saggese on the roster, send Michael Siani down, until you find out, okay, Saggese is overmatched. In that scenario, sure. Make the switch again. But for right now, I would personally lean that direction.
Yeah, I think I would as well. And it's kind of twofold for me. One, or actually probably threefold. I agree that Walker looks above average. Now, I'm not saying he's been excellent defensively, but he definitely looks passable late in games, and Victor Scott has closed the gap on Michael Siani, in my opinion. It is no longer a clear, hey, Michael Siani is our best defender in center field, and it is by a wide margin. I still think he probably is your best defensive center fielder. Scott's really closed in on that gap. But it's that. It's, hey, our identity as a team is going to be our offense, as we have seen so far this year. And to your point, like if you want the best way to construct our lineup might be with 3 or 4 lefties up at the top right now. If you don't want to bump Wynn into that 2 spot, well then yeah, you need those counters to potentially be on the bench to help avoid that lane that you're talking about. And then the third one for me is they actually are getting themselves in more trouble with the hands team right now than if they weren't to have that available to them. And the reason I say that is because I think they're doing it right of, hey, we're going to bring in Siani late into these baseball games. We're going to pull Walker out, and Scott's going to be in right field because that is definitely their best defensive alignment with Nootbaar and left. But the problem they're having is the bullpen's blowing up. And it's not like it's because, well, our defense didn't get there. No, these are balls that are hitting the gap that nobody's catching. And then what happens?
Walker's arm is actually like partially a strength in these situations because having Walker's arm in right field is helpful to have that cannon out there to potentially
100%.
Strike down a runner at home. I don't think it would have made a difference necessarily in any of these games, but having Siani hasn't made a difference.
No. And Nootbaar's arm grade's below average, but he's not coming out. And I think Scott's grade's below average right now, and you're putting him into a corner where Walker's cannon would be. But that would be the other issue that I would bring up to this is, look, I don't mind having the hands team, but your bullpen's been so bad so far that if you do go to the hands team, you can't trust your bullpen to close the game out. Right now, there's so little, like there's probably 2, maybe 3 if you consider to trust Leahy, but they're still going to Fernandez. They're still going to JoJo in late inning spots. And then what happens is if you blow that lead, your hands team is now stuck back out there, and now you're not playing to any identity. You were playing kind of conservative. It backfired. Now you can't play aggressive because you can't play an offensive mindset because you potentially pulled Walker out. And that's why I loved what Ollie did in that LA series. And I think we talked about this on the last podcast. He kept Walker in. Didn't go to the hands team in that game that went to extra innings. And then his at-bat came around. But those would be the 3 things that I would say as to why I am leaning towards they may need to have that series conversation for Saggese over Siani.
We've mentioned a number of times that the Cardinals' offense is their strength right now. I do believe that. I think the Cardinals' offense is their strength. I also think there's some warning signs that are out there right now that are at least worthy of mentioning. Jordan Walker is hitting the ball a lot, but he's hitting it on the ground. If you look at some of the underlying numbers for certain guys, Nolan Arenado is one of those, there are some trends that are not glowing. Now, Nootbaar's still hitting the ball hard as hell. Donovan's been great. Wynn is picking it up quite a bit. Like there are certain guys also that are playing even above what your expectations would have been. And pulling Ivan Herrera out of the lineup also has a real ripple effect through this lineup because he was a guy that like we wouldn't even be having this conversation right now if Ivan Herrera was available.
100%. Because
he would have just been in the 2-hole. You just flip him and Willson Contreras and say, hey, man, I'm sorry, this guy's just too good to avoid. It's not a conversation about what you're doing. It's a conversation about, dude, come on. You can see this, right? The guy hit 3 home runs in a game, hit another one a couple of days later. Like, yeah, we need that guy out there. So that's part of this as well. On this road trip, the Cardinals as a team hit 260. That's fine. That's pretty damn good, actually, in the modern game. They got on base as a team 32% of the time. Fine. You can live with that. Their strikeout rates were in kind of the middle of the pack. Walk rate was, again, middle of the pack. Slug was 380. The slugging percentage is starting to dip a little bit. Now, some of that is Contreras is not hitting for power. Some of that is Ivan Herrera is no longer in the lineup. A lot of it is this is just not a lineup that, and Nolan Gorman as well. A lot of it is this just isn't a lineup that we should have expected to slug a whole lot coming into the season. That's my biggest warning sign about, hey, this is an offensive-minded team, an offensive-oriented team. I feel like the game where you felt this the most was actually yesterday, where you end up with 1 run in the game. Why? Because you never did damage with a runner in scoring position. That is what this team struggled with a year ago, is that, yeah, they would hit for a little bit of average with runners on. They just never hit for any power. You've got to find that power. And I don't know where you find it in this lineup because I don't think it's Mason Wynn. Nootbaar's already hitting for a little bit of power. Donovan's hitting for more than you expect. Burleson probably could add a little bit. Contreras needs to add some, and maybe eventually you get more out of Walker. But you really need Herrera and Gorman back in this lineup because that was supposed to be a big part of the slugging percentage in this lineup. And that's my fear going into this 13-game stretch. You won't have Ivan Herrera for it. We'll see what the plan is with Nolan Gorman and how often he'll be in this lineup. I would hope a decent amount. They're lacking slug right now, and that is something that reared its ugly head in Pittsburgh. I fear it might do the same thing when they go up against teams like Philadelphia.
Yeah, and it was a concern that I had going into the year because it's hard to look at their lineup and go, I mean, I don't even think they still have this guy now, thanks to Contreras' slow start. They don't have a guy you can write in pen for 30 homers, 100 RBIs. And Arenado's not that guy anymore.
Sure.
And if you don't slug, I think you saw a little bit of this in the Red Sox series as well, especially that game that they blew where it was 4-2. Remember, they had the bases loaded with 1 out, I think it was. And it was station to station. It just consistently is starting to feel station to station. And why do you need to slug in the modern game? It's because guys like Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, Paul Skeens, their stuff is too good to pile up 3 hits is what you're saying. Even if you're being aggressive and saying, we're going to get a single, that single's going to get the guy from first to third, and then that single's going to score that guy. You're asking for 3 hits in an inning against a Paul Skeens, a Zach Wheeler, and Aaron Nola.
Most of these are giving up 1.
Exactly.
Most of these, you're really fortunate if you get more than 1 in any individual inning, and that's why it's hard to win the way that they have been so far. Now, some of that was they were hitting with a little more authority earlier on in the season when they were winning these games. Lately, it's been less of that. They are getting consistently 9+ hits in these games. Consistently, man, up until yesterday, basically. And they were scoring up until yesterday 4 runs per game. So they're finding a way to make it work. It's just one of those warning signs that, hey, eventually the sequencing might go a little differently. And suddenly we're talking about, hey, what happened to the thump? What happened to the power in the middle of the order? The answer is it's on the IL.
Yeah.
And some of it was just
now
a little bit of good fortune.
I will say maybe this is more of a feel thing than it is like what's actually going on. I'd have to dig really deep into this to find out. It does feel like they're trying to manufacture slug. Like Scott gets on, he's gone. He's got 5 stolen bases,
For sure.
Which he had all of last year in his time with the St. Louis
Jordan
Cardinals.
Walker doing a lot of that.
Jordan Walker's being aggressive on the base paths. They got a little too aggressive in the game yesterday. Where
Donnie
they sent
as well.
Siani. Yeah, Donovan's been playing well doing that. Like, it feels like they're trying to manufacture.
No doubt.
And the other thing, too, and this isn't more slug, but it is more pressure. Though they are not hitting for power, if you're going to be a singles team, at least don't strike out a lot and put the ball in play. And we mentioned this in the last podcast. What happens when Arenado puts the ball in play? The first baseman commits the error. It helps force that game into extra innings. They did that a little bit in the Pirates series as well of, okay, well, you're going to have to make the play because though we may not be slugging, well, we're going to put the ball in play. And watching the Pirates play defense was an adventure. So you can see where that's a positive
It's
for
JC.
them.
You got to make sure you get to home.
Yeah,
though.
exactly. Exactly. But I think those two things... Now, I don't know if those will make up for their lack of slug, but at least it feels like the feel is, hey, they're trying to manufacture, or they're at least trying to put more pressure on these teams.
It can help at a minimum, right? It can manufacture that slug to where you got a man standing on second, and now instead of needing 3 singles, you get a hard hit single for that second hit, and that guy's coming in. All right, you said you wanted to play a game today. What do you got?
Yeah, so I dug in a little bit to your point on looking at some of the numbers, and I will call this news or noise. And the first one for you here, I want to start with Jordan Walker. Because you look at Jordan Walker's slash, and you watch the at-bats, he looks pretty good. 282 batting average, 378 on base, 359 slug. What's kind of going under the radar, because it's more of a feel thing watching him at the plate, he has the highest ground ball rate of his career so far. Small sample size still, I would say. 59% is how much he's putting on the ground. If you look at his Baseball Savant page and you look, oh, where's he getting his hits? It's like they drew a diamond around the diamond because it's all on the ground all the time. Is it news or noise that his ground ball percentage is the highest it's been?
It's news, but I think there is some required nuance to have this conversation. It's news because it means that this is who he is. At least right now. I don't know if he's going to be able to change this down the road, maybe eventually. And I'm not telling you, listener, let's talk.
Or YouTube watcher.
I'm not telling you that he needs to hit the ball in the air with a lot of fly balls that are going to the warning track. That's bad. That is the same thing as an out that is on the ground. I would like him to hit line drives. That is ideal. that is where the most power comes from, and that is where the highest batting average comes from. So line drives, instead of saying get it in the air, the worst thing that anybody ever did that was within the analytics community was they said, we want you to get the ball in the air. No, stop. We want you to hit the ball on the line. That should be a new phrasing. Like in politics, there's a lot of stuff that is about messaging. You can have a terrible idea that sounds great based on the messaging, and you can have a great idea that sounds terrible based on messaging. The worst messaging the analytics community has maybe ever had. 1, strikeouts don't matter. Don't say that. That's not true. 2, get the ball in the air. No, hit the ball on the line. All right, continuing on here. So with Jordan Walker, I do think it is news that he's hitting the ball on the ground again. I also think it's noteworthy that he's getting results. And sometimes with young guys, just allow them to go be who they are and see what it looks like. Because in the first year, they saw what it looked like, and for a while there, it looked pretty good. He had that hitting streak for a while, and then eventually they're like, you know what, we're pulling the plug on this. This is not going to be sustainable. Find out. Why not find out if it's going to be sustainable? And I think that's what they're doing right now is just saying, you know what, go out there. Let's see what this looks like for the first 50 games of the season. And if you have a 60% ground ball rate, dude, there's like nobody else in baseball that survives that way.
Yeah.
There are outliers, though, man. Like we talked about Phil Maton coming into the season. And you were low on the signing because he doesn't have a lot of velo, and it's just kind of like this weird profile as a reliever. But if you just look at the results, Phil Maton for his entire career has a pretty decent strikeout rate, despite the fact that he throws like 89 miles an hour. It's a weird profile. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but it works for him. He's an outlier. And so when you look at it, you see the results, and you go out there and watch it, you're like, yeah, there's nothing fluky about this. He's just a good pitcher. It works for him. Maybe it's just going to work for Jordan Walker. He swings harder than anybody in the sport. He ends up getting decent results. He hits the crap out of the baseball, man. So I don't know that he's going to hit for the power that you were looking for, but can he be a 260 to 270 hitter with this because he's got good speed and because he hits it as hard as he does, even if it's on the ground? Maybe the answer is yes. So it's news, changes the profile of player that you think that he's going to be right now. But I don't think it means that he's some bust.
I think it's news. I think the fan base will say it's noise. And the reason I say that is because of what you just said. Because if this is who he is, and again, his on base is higher than his slug. And my expectation is that's going to drop. To his credit, though, he's raised his walk rate so far through. Totally. He's at 11%. Last year it was at 5.6. The first year when he was good in 2023 he was at 8%. So we'll see if this is something where he draws his walks a little bit more than I'm expecting. But the reason I say I think it's going to be noise for the fan base thought this guy's the savior, right? And we had this conversation on the first podcast episode because I thought it was in the realm of possibilities. Is what if Walker and Gorman don't hit, but you get positive returns on Ivan Herrera, and Newpar stays healthy for a full year, and you actually see what he's capable of. And guess what's happening right now? And that's the exact same thing that's happening right now.
Basically, what if the 1 and 3 hole hitters that we thought we were getting are different than the names that we expect? Or really, it should have been like the 3 and the 5, but now you're at 1 and 3 with potentially Herrera and Newpar.
So I agree. I think it's probably news. If he can have success doing this, just let him do it. I do think it will be noise for the fan base. Another one, I want to stick with another offensive player. Nolan Arenado. We talked about the bat speed increase. Hit the home run in the home opener, if I remember correctly it was. Had a couple extra base hits in the opening series against the Twins. Since then, he's still hitting for average, and he's not striking out. 1 extra base hit this month in April. News or noise that he's only got 1 extra base hit here in the month of April?
It's news, man. It's unfortunate, but it's news. He is swinging the bat faster than he did a year ago, and I know people get so annoyed with some of these nerdy numbers, but it matters. It leads to better results typically, and we have seen better results from Nolan Arenado. He is getting on base. He's hitting for average. I think that we just have to be open-minded to the notion that this is who he is. For the latter stages of his career, he's going to be a 270-ish hitter. Gets on base at a 34-35% clip, hopefully. And it's more of a 15 to 20 home run hitter than a 25 to 35 home run hitter. So I think it's news, and I do think that his power is not what it once was. And that's okay. He can still be a decent player that way if he continues to play solid defense, but it's not what you were hoping for this year. If you wanted the full Nolan Arenado bounce back season.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is. I think it is going to be something that he is for now on. I think he is no longer that power guy, and I think it gives you 2 answers for the Cardinals. If this is what he ends up becoming, 1, we will be with this contract on the books for the rest of its time. Because if he had a bounce back, there was probably an opportunity.
Unless
if they
you eat
wanted
half
to.
of it. You could eat half of it, and it could still work for
Sure,
money.
I'm skeptical if ownership's going to do that based on everything that's
More
came
than
out
fair.
from this past offseason, but that is possible. The second thing is, now you know you have to search for the middle of the order. Because you know what this profile is for Nolan Arenado? It is a Brendan Donovan / Alec Burleson-esque bat that should hit
Burleson.
fifth. It should hit fifth for you. Because I think Burley's in the right spot right now. Got a little bit pop. He's got more pop than Arenado at this point. But that guy you would prefer to have fifth. I think that guy can hit in the top of your order if he's hitting for average. That's where Arenado is. So what I'm saying is the Cardinals, to me, still need to find their 3 and their full 4-hole hitters. And that I say that even while Brendan Donovan is playing really well. To me, he's not a 3-hole hitter. He's a really good 1 or 2 hitter for a team up at the top of the zone base. But I think those are the two biggest things that you can learn with this being what Nolan Arenado is.
And I think Herrera could give you some answers up there. Like Herrera could be your he could end up being your cleanup hitter. Contreras might be long-term, shorter term, but longer term. Your 2-hole hitter. Nootbaar might be your leadoff guy. Burleson 5. Maybe Arenado is your 6-hole. And then your 7, 8, 9 is Walker, Wynn, and Scott in some order. Like that, or maybe Gorman fits in there. Maybe Gorman ends up as your 3. Whatever. There are outs for this, but Herrera has to be what he's been, and you need some positive returns from probably one guy either in your system currently or somebody that adds from the outside. I agree with that.
All right, now I want to go to the pitching side here because I got 2. News or noise? Bullpen as a whole has a 4.94 ERA and is 24th in baseball.
News. It's one of the biggest questions that I had coming into the season is how is this unit going to look and what does it mean if early the returns aren't positive? You're losing games that last year you didn't. That's the thing. Like last year you banked all of these wins because your bullpen was so locked down in those late innings. I think they lost 2 games last year when leading after 7 or something like that.
Ridiculous like
it was just an insane number. And this year you've already, I think, probably matched. I'd have to look this up, but I would imagine you've already matched the number of games from a year ago that you lost in that way. So it's news. It means that those games that previously you had banked are no longer there. It sucks. It does not mean you're going to have a bad bullpen, though. This bullpen could change in a month. We've seen this before. 2021? Was that the McFarland year?
Yeah,
where him and Whitgren came in?
No, that was McFarland, Luis Garcia.
That's what it was.
And I think there might have been one more, but those were the big 2 that they
Completely overhauled the bullpen, and that was like in mid-July that they were able to do that. So you can make this thing work on the fly with scrap pieces from like whether it's your system or go out and sign a dude that was literally
100%.
like just available to every team and you found the use for him in the specific role that works for him. It can be fixed, but right now it needs to be fixed.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is news. I think this is something that they've got to look into fixing. Of all the things that they decided to, hey, we're in this retool, we need a youth movement, the bullpen was the one we decided to settle on because of what you're saying. These things are so volatile. I keep mentioning this. David Bednar is in AAA. You saw how quick it went for Giovanni Gallegos, and I know that guy was older, had his run. It just disappeared from him. He no longer was a guy you could count on. The other thing for them, they just don't strike anybody out. When you talk about a bullpen, you've got to have flamethrowers that get guys out. They currently are 23rd in strikeouts per 9 with this bullpen. That's not good enough. It's going to have to race. And these are the names that are below them right now. And you tell me if you think these are good quality baseball teams. Colorado is below them. Seattle is below them. Cincinnati is below them. Miami is below them.
Seattle might be decent, but they're going to be on the backs of their rotation, not their bullpen.
And then
Do we have anything else?
Royals and Cubs are there as well. But the last one I've got for you. News or noise? Sonny Gray's home run issue is still a thing. 4 home runs allowed, second most in baseball.
TBD. I know that's a cop-out answer, TBD. It's really just a couple of home runs thus far, which can throw this off completely. Is it an issue for him? I don't know yet. My belief is no. I think he's going to be fine in this regard, but give me like 5 starts, and then at that point in time, we can have a little bit longer of a conversation on this.
See, I'm saying news. I think he's going to have a problem, and I know you're going to hate what I'm about to bring up.
Cool.
This was a major issue in spring training, too. And I get he was working on stuff. Man, you go from giving up a bunch of home runs last year, which was just not in his profile in Minnesota. I mean, he gave up 21 home runs last year to 8 the previous season with Minnesota. He's already given up 4 here. I think that's going to be a sustained issue. It's just a matter of, can he load them to solo home runs? If you do, things will be fine. If you don't, things can snowball on him. I think this is the biggest reason why he's probably going to have an ERA where it was about last year, which was like 3.8 3.9. I think he'll be somewhere in there. If he could limit the home run problem, he will be back where he was with Minnesota, which is a guy that's in the Cy Young conversation.
No doubt about it. All right, Cardinals back in action this weekend against the Phillies. Then by the time that we talk to you next, they will also have played against the Houston Astros. T-Bone, they'll play 6 games between when we are recording today and when we will next speak. How many of those 6 games do you believe they will win?
I think they will win 3.
It's optimistic.
I think the Astros is the team where I'm not as worried about their pitching. And that lineup's okay. I think your offense will be able to help you beat the Astros. The Phillies is the one that I'm looking at going, I have no idea how Ollie's going to get through this thing alive.
They beat Skeens, so who knows?
That's fair. I'm more worried about their pitching going up against Philadelphia. So I think they drop 2 or 3 to Philly, and they win 2 or 3 from the Astros. I say they win 3.
I say they win 2 of their next 6, and we will be talking about them being potentially 6 games under 500 when we talk next.
What a fun podcast that'll be.
I hope that is not the case. For Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Thank you guys so much for spending some time with us today. If you guys want to, feel free to put in a review over on Apple as well. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast. If you prefer to watch it, you can do that over there on YouTube, youtube.com/101ESPN-STL. Just a programming note, next week, the studio that we typically use in here for the video feed is going to be in use elsewhere. So we will have to do an audio exclusive podcast next week. So if you're looking for this, you're going over on YouTube, you're checking it, just know it will exclusively be available over on the audio side. We'll post one on video as well, but it will not have these beautiful faces that you're used to seeing. So be sure to stay tuned for that. We'll be recording once again next week. For Tanner, I'm BK. We'll talk to you then here on the Redbird Report on 101 ESPN.
Find every episode of the Redbird Report with Brandon Kiley and Tanner Hendrickson on YouTube or at 101ESPN.com.